The global data center market is projected to reach north of $1 trillion by 2030, registering a compound annual growth rate of 10.5% from today till 2030. Despite overarching macroeconomic scenarios and outcomes expected to be challenging in the months and years ahead, the data center industry is set to navigate this and continue to grow exponentially on the back of hefty digital demand. That demand is being answered by the largest players across the globe, including EdgeConneX, an EQT-backed hyperscale data center owner and operator whose footprint includes more than 60 facilities across 50 unique markets throughout 30 countries. The company's portfolio includes more than 200 far edge and edge POP deployments and more than 0.5 gigawatt of capacity deployed and or in development worldwide. Joining me today to discuss the market dynamics as well as the group's growth is Chief Executive Randy Brouckman. And Randy, it's a pleasure speaking to you. I think the last time we spoke was in London in November or December 2021. At the time you were closing the shareholder deal, which we'll be touching on in a second. I mean, much has happened in the world and EdgeConneX as well since then. I think that's fair to say. EdgeConneX has grown exponentially over the last 12 months on the back of the deal with Share and many other deals that you've also done. What would you say have been the most significant contributing factors to this growth? And how do you see the growth impacting the way EdgeConneX approaches as the year ahead as a legitimate global player?
Very good. Well, thank you, and it's good to see you again, even if it is unfortunately over Zoom due to elevator mechanical issues. We look forward to seeing you again in person here in the near term. So what's contributing to the growth? And it's been frankly, this last year's been fantastic, and we are bullish on the future. But it's actually been over the last few years. Look, simply put, Zhao, the adoption of the cloud continues to accelerate. I know a lot of enterprises are there, but most are on their journey. Governments are early in their journey. And let's be frank, the power of the cloud, the richness of the service offerings of the cloud, the where and when to use the cloud is getting clearer and clearer all the time. And for as outstanding and as interesting as it is, and we're fortunate, beyond fortunate, to be able to support some of the world's largest tech companies in both deploying the cloud and others on their journey to the cloud. And I use that loosely. It's kind of cloud. It encompasses SaaS and some of the other core tech like content that goes with it. We see another wave coming. I mean, we are definitely in the just starting to show up opportunities around AI, and more importantly, the use of AI as you'll get specific models that will be built around the technology, and it's just a wonderful place to be. So the reality is the digitalization is not slowing down; it's accelerating, and it's still in a stage where, as something becomes more digitized, as companies become more comfortable working, not necessarily working remote in the purest sense, where nobody comes to an office anywhere, but where the ability to work collaboratively across multiple locations, be they homes or smaller offices, et cetera, we're starting to see the need for more and more innovation, right? That generates more data, more interesting reporting mechanisms, more ways of collaborating on projects. So the digitalization is causing more digitalization, and it's a great place to be. Let's not kid ourselves. The companies that we're talking about, the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Googles, the Alibabas, the Tencents, pretty innovative folks, and getting very customer focused as well on how they can improve the world.
I think the power of cloud is an extremely interesting topic to talk about, especially when we look into emerging markets. And once those guys also get the tools that more mature markets have, I think the world's going to change dramatically. And I like the point that you made about AI, because I think we've seen in the past, 2-3 months, how AI has taken over the world. And it's only the beginning, and everyone is impressed by what things like ChatGPT can do, but there's dozens of different platforms out there now. And it's only the beginning.
I don't know if it's taken over the world, but it's certainly taken over our imaginations.
Yeah. Is it taking over your data centers? Are you seeing?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but look, I think that the reality is we are seeing requests for that next step function increase in power densities, in future in future-proofing that next wave. So, we've all stepped through these, right? From the traditional 2N water-cooled systems to being water conservative N+1 architectures to now what we start to see with AI. So some exciting times in front of us.
Okay, well, actually picking up on the water conversation and electricity conversation, because these more power hungry applications and workloads, they're going to require a lot more from a data center operator and its infrastructure. So sustainability is a massive topic, and I know you're a big advocate for it. And EdgeConneX, there's a lot of different activities around sustainability, and even within the wider ESG spectrum. But you have the goal that by 2030 you want to become carbon, waste, and water neutral. Which there's not a lot of operators wanting to do that by 2030. They've just focused very much on the carbon side of things. And I think the fact that you pick up the water is very interesting. You've also recently executed $3.3 billion in sustainability linked financing to help speed up this process and expand the operations. How are you going to get there beyond this financing? And before you get there, how are you changing the landscape of becoming a leader in the sustainable edge space?
Yeah, so you're right. We are committed. And I don't have all the answers how to get there, which
no one does. So
I think it's part of the challenge, part of the fun, and part of what gets us up in the morning. But as EdgeConneX, we believe in three things, right? If we take care of our customers, we take care of our people, and we take care of the planet, the rest takes care of itself. And it's really that simple a message. It's not new for us. It's really we've been talking about it since we started the company 13, 14 years ago. And, I think, said we do want that. I actually think we need it. But as an industry, I do want to do a call out, right? I'm proud of all our people at EdgeConneX and how committed they are to it. But I think as an industry, this industry has embraced sustainability. It helps that that the largest customers in the industry are frankly beacons of hope and change when it comes to sustainability. But this industry has embraced it both on its own and in partnership with the customers. To answer how you get there, by the way, it's one step at a time, right? There's not going to be a big bang sustainability solution, but we have to do things today that we can then scale to get to 2030. So look, all of us have found ways to get to carbon neutrality in our power footprints. And that's in conjunction with your customers and working together. In the simplest way, it's great if you can do a PPA or other types of true offsets that put power on the grid, right? And that's kind of what the goal is. It isn't just to buy a credit. And we're all doing that, and I think we've all found ways to get there. I think on power, if I take it to the next step, let's start to talk about on-site generation and storage and applying some of those technologies that afford us to be able to use renewable even when it's not renewable and have some storage solutions. So I think there's some interesting ways to get there. If we take storage to its fullest, well, you can even start to think about changing backup mechanisms then. We are when we're starting to do alternative power sources like gas plants or other alternatives, we are designing and picking products that can grow, that can today take biomass gas, can take hydrogen infusion, and ultimately the engines that can be swung over to pure hydrogen. So you plant the flag today with core infrastructure that can upgrade, update as things like green hydrogen become available. So that kind of on the power side. On the water side, boy, it was nice not to have too much legacy when we started the company. It was kind of as obvious as the nose on your face, but water is a pretty scarce resource in much of the world as well. And the amount of power required to get potable water is just remarkable when you kind of play it out. And so from the beginning, we started with an economizer baseline design. We dabbled once in an evaporative cooling solution. It drives fantastic PUE, but it comes at an expense. Now we've worked with what's the right kind of water to use for that and so on. I think as we've progressed and as we look at the trend with the increasing power demands, that whether it's AI or EVs, the processing of the data there, or some of the other interesting content and gaming things that are emerging in the marketplace. We've seen this power increase per rack, if you will, and therefore heating densities increasing. We've started to drive to proper sized with the right kind of tap offs, closed loop cooling systems, right? I think we've all talking about immersion cooling. I think there's some materials issues between here and there, operations issues between here and there, but we are kind of a get ready and have run some trials with chilled water at the chip level. So kind of water cooled chips. And so we're laying out an architecture that does that, but doesn't consume water. As for zero waste, so again, that's kind of do some core design, test it, expand it, improve it, and then you've got that going forward. When it comes to zero waste, same thing. This year we're doing our first, we've raised the flag on our team. We're going to go for operational data center zero waste. And we want to have those first certified zero waste data centers. You do the first couple, then you expand it across the footprint. Then you focus on how to do it earlier in the life cycle, and you go through it. I think the last thing I'd point out, it's a white paper we put out this past year. We did together with a partner, Gridmatic, we were able to do a really interesting case study trial, but live at our Houston data center, where using AI technology, quite frankly, taking inputs from weather data, from kind of seasonal data that's coming through, traditional information, interest rates, all these variables that go into it. We kind of were able to do spot buys in and out of the renewable marketplace. And we took what went from 38% renewable in the grid. We were able to take our data center to just shy of 80% renewable hour-to-hour offset. So not at the end of the game, but literally as used hour-to-hour, offsetting the 24/7 challenge, if you will, that Google and others have thrown down. 38% to 80%, and the price per kilowatt went down. So, that's volumes about what you can do. Now, that's not super scale and global or anything, but you ask how you get there, Jai. You run that, you take the key learnings, and you start applying it, regionally and ultimately globally.
Okay, I mean,
I'm passionate about it if you can't tell.
I took a few notes because, I mean, first I like the point that you made, one step at a time, and I think a lot of people, they want to jump into this and do everything in one go, and like most things in life, if you try to do everything at once, it most likely you won't succeed. So it has to be one step at a time. So I'm on you on that one. I'll ask you about what you just said about sometimes not being scalable, because I think that's where the sector is also going into more bespoke and localized solutions. Do you see that happening in the markets more widely? Not even just EdgeConneX, the market more widely. People really focusing now on region by region, as opposed to just copy and paste something from the US into Asia, into Africa, into Europe. Are we seeing more consideration for that, especially on the environmental side?
Yeah, so let's take it in parts. I think I think to the degree possible, you try to standardize certainly your design, your architecture, implementation, your methods and procedures, or you don't scale. Are there unique challenges regionally? Yes, absolutely. Power is different in each market. Regulatory requirements are different. Like the heat, how you expunge heat, how you reuse heat matters a lot different in Southeast Asia than what it does in say Western Europe or cooler parts of Western Europe. So there are different challenges, different opportunities, quite frankly, depending on the regional variableness. And let's not kid ourselves. Power is also different region to region, and that's probably way too broad a brush to paint with. Market to market, and I think the most astute people know it's submarket to submarket, where what's available with power. Is it grid power? Do you have to do your own self-generation? Access to renewable power, the ability to track that renewable power back to its source. That varies regionally, that varies market to market, country to country, oftentimes submarket to submarket. So So there is a layer, a wrapper around this that is not the same place to place.
Okay. And then a second question on the back of what you said around power. And I think I've only asked this question once, and this was many years ago. I think it was 6-7 years ago that I asked to someone, because you mentioned on-site power generation and storage. And I remember asking someone back in the days of, will this eventually become a new revenue stream for data center operators? And again, this is not EdgeConneX related. This is industry-wise, kind of your futuristic view of what could happen. Do you think power could become a new revenue source for data centers, or is that too far-fetched?
No, look, anything's possible. So I think it becomes a new revenue source, potentially. Look, if we have to build power generation that goes far beyond what the data centers that it can consume or that the customers require, by definition, you're going to turn it into a revenue stream, right? None of us are going to have capacity sit there idle. I think probably right-sizing that and optimizing it for the problem at hand is in everybody's best interest. I do think that depending on which markets you want to work in, if you're going to work in many markets in Europe or a few sub-markets in Asia and so on, you're going to have to be proficient at either have a great partner or have, the ability yourself to implement self-generation solutions, power generation solutions, power storage solutions, depending on what your renewable footprint is or access to renewable power. I think those are going to become tools in our toolkit and or partners that you need to have in order to execute on that.
Yeah. Well, that was a much better answer than what I got 6-7 years ago. I can tell you that.
Did I give it to you wrong then?
No. I guess back then the market just wasn't willing to talk about these sort of things. The view was very much, we do this, the grid does their bit, and that was kind of where the conversation was at the time. But moving on to one of my favorite topics, which is geographies. I'm not going to touch so much on the Americans and Europe because what you're doing is quite well known already. And in Europe, especially with the tier 2 markets, that's quite fascinating to watch. But I think a special markets that you've really gone into over the last 12, 24 months, especially, it's Asia. So Asia Pacific. You've done the deal with the Adani, which we created EdgeConneX. I know we don't have dollar figures to that, but we know it's well over, it's a couple billions at least of being deployed across the country over the next 10 years. You've got Share in China as well, which, if I remember, it's also quite a sizable figure. You've got GTN in Indonesia, and then one of the latest was Abwitsi Infra Capital in the Philippines. So 2 very interesting markets in Southeast Asia as well. Talk us through what you expect to happen in 2023 and who you're going to buy next or partner with next.
Hopefully partner with. I think depending on the market, when we look at it, it took us a while to get to Asia simply because we had, frankly, a tremendous amount of growth in first in the Americas, then first in North America, then in Europe, and then in South America. And as you said, when we talk about sustainability, you can't do it all at once. We didn't feel we wanted to try to boil the ocean and do every market simultaneously on a global scale. We wanted to do what we said we were going to do each and every time, and then earn the right to expand into those. And quite frankly, we needed the capital, we needed the right partner, and we needed the right successes under our belt. We had all those happen to come together at the time. We completed the transaction with EQT at the end of 2020. They were eager to expand to truly global. We were too. And so we embarked on that journey in 2021. And you're correct, it's been a rocket ship, quite frankly. India's an outstanding market. We've done well there. Chiro was a little bit of a different approach. It was a minority investment, but it was very focused in with 2 important themes. And we talked about this a year ago. Number one was we thought we were going to be well positioned to help the West succeed in China when it was ready to go. That's a delayed, that's not infinitely delayed, but that's obviously got its own set of things to navigate through. Look, I think saner minds prevail in this world. Ultimately, the world's largest and second largest economies will get along. It's at some point in time, it's to everyone's benefit. But the other thing, as you recall, Zhao, was we saw an opportunity to work with the Chinese tech, content, cloud, et cetera, companies, both in China, demonstrating we could give them a China-wide solution, not dissimilar to what we were able to do with US hyperscalers, but then also support their ambitions coming onto a global scale. That second half of that equation is bearing fruit. And so it's that presence has allowed us a much more close and tight relationship with to get to know some of the strategies, understand some of the aspirations, et cetera, of these name brand companies, and be able to support them in a giant market in China, but then also become a natural extension and help them succeed outside of China. So, so that was that philosophy there. With regard to Jakarta, we went all in. It's been hugely successful for us. We acquired a small company, GTM, which gave us the right licenses, an outstanding team, highly connected center, super connected center. And then we knew we could bring that hyperscale. We saw the hyperscale demand emerging, and we were ready for it. And you'll continue to hear expansion. I think you'll be floored. Massive expansion plans going on throughout that market. I intend to continue to look for the right partners, and we'll expand to 2 to 3 more additional Asian markets over the next 12 to 24 months. I suspect for the most part, we'll do it with the right partners. There is so much local know-how required, relationships required. And you hit on the one, which is the Aboitiz relationship. Again, an outstanding reputable family that is big in land development and power generation. I think the largest renewable power producer. See my theme here. I try to partner with the large renewable power
noticeable
in these markets. I think we bring our core competency, they bring their core competency, and together we bring a heck of an interesting solution for our customers. We like to think for our customers when you bring those things together. And so, look, Philippines is early days. We get that, but it's a market where both the US hyperscalers are coming, as well as the Chinese hyperscalers. The Philippines, like so many other countries, are early innings figuring out data sovereignty issues, figuring out data protection issues, trying to figure out, am I comfortable having, my citizens' data not stored in country? Where do I need it to be? So, and we're seeing that across the region, by the way. We're seeing that across the region, which I think is going to open new markets, is going to create, frankly, probably a bit of a challenge, because when these laws pass, the infrastructure may not be there. And so there's going to be you got to start planning now for what's going to be needed in the not too distant future. So,
yeah, well, we sort of seen that in India, the laws coming into force before the infrastructure was there, which created a bit of a nightmare, which then speeded up the setting up of data centers. And it wasn't just EdgeConneX, it was pretty much everyone then rushed in because the doors opened on the back of those laws getting across.
And I think you'll see that in other places, and there'll be the laws will go too far in some places and not far enough in others, but we'll figure it out, right? And look, we see it even in Europe. We see, where data sensitivity, data sovereignty, data security, data protection drive certain levels of demands. And of course, we can go, when you have the ability to share data across a wider scope, you build bigger infrastructure. So it's an exciting time we live in.
Yeah, I mean, we did see, as painful as GDPR was to get in place, it did generate some business for data center operators, because there was a lot of construction that had to happen on the back of that. Even with Brexit, and I mean, we still don't really know Brexit in full, but that's also driven a bit of construction on both sides of the channel. For data centers.
I would agree. I think that's still a work in progress too.
Yeah. So, yeah. Let's leave it at that. But in Asia, I mean, you mentioned Indonesia and Southeast Asia. I think that's a fascinating sub-region within the Asia region, because what we don't think is there's hundreds of millions of people living in that area, and you very easily reach 5 billion people.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And then you start to put the characteristics around it. In general, a young population. We'll ignore the Japan-China situation, but in general, a very young population, relatively speaking, averaging, in the 20s to low 30s, depending on which particular country you're talking about. It went from an underconnected society to an extremely well-connected, right? They got to leapfrog running a bunch of copper in the ground. Thank you, wireless. I actually think the digitalization is the same thing. They're not going to end up starting with a bunch of legacy mainframe-based systems that they have to migrate off of to get to the cloud, right? There's an opportunity here to accelerate the digitalization of the economy, of the people, and democratize that data and democratize the commercial opportunities for it, simply because they don't have the legacy. There's not such a stranglehold on it. So it's an exciting region, and then you drill down into each market, and there's some great opportunities there.
But the legacy infrastructure point that you made is quite a good one, because it's one that we actually touch upon very much in Africa, where it's a market where you have nothing and you're going to have the latest installed, and you can, if things were done properly, it could really become, it could be ahead of more mature markets like Europe, because we are dealing with legacy and we are having to replace systems and exchange cables and fiber and all that. But beyond Asia Pacific, and then within the markets they operate, and even the ones that you don't operate, aka Africa, what other regions, market, cities are exciting you at the moment?
Yeah, so look, I think we see, if I kind of put on my today through the next 3 to 5 years hat, I think we'll continue to see growth, predictable, large but predictable growth in Europe and North America. I think that's maybe the denominator so big. I think the rate will be a little different in North America between you and me. I think Europe, we're still seeing meaningful growth, albeit a much bigger denominator now. When I look at pace of growth, there's no doubt in my mind we're going to see it, just given where we're at in Asia writ large, and we see a tremendous amount of growth in South America too. Same type of things that are there. If I put on my kind of 3 to 5 year plus hat out to 10 years, I believe we'll be in Africa, right? And again, I think we'll want to have the right partners. We'll want to not pretend to be that we know what we're doing everywhere, anywhere, day one. So we'll want to go in. We want to go in with the right partners, and then we'll want to help bring what we can do well to them, and then hopefully accelerate and grow the market. I continue to think there's an opportunity. It's heating up, but I continue to think that the Middle East is probably the other place where we need to see a lot of things unfold. Again, data sovereignty, the ability to move data across the region, but maintain certain privacy issues. Let's try to start thinking on a regional basis. Obviously, the cable systems that are going in there are going to help facilitate that. So, it's a tricky region to operate, but I think it's also an underserved region. And when I look at the aspirations of Saudi and Bahrain and UAE's commanding position today, but recognizing the transformation it's trying to do with its economy, there's some interesting opportunities there. Obviously, we're in Israel today. Outstanding market. Our first and second data centers are filled already. You're going to hear more from, I know, we're quietly in the last year. Boom, right? Randy, where's your third, fourth, and fifth? And the answer is stay tuned. That's right. So just, it's just think about that, right? We got into it, a year and a half ago? Boom, boom, right? So just marching right through it.
No, but Israel is really booming with enterprise demand, cloud demand, and the startup scene is gigantic there. It's really growing.
Per capita, there's nothing like it when it comes to the startup scene. You've got a government that's driving migration to the cloud. I think the investments in security and and reliability that the cloud have made over the years are bearing fruit. So, good for everyone.
That's interesting. I mean, and across the Middle East and Africa, the amount of names that come into mind that could be good partners. I can see a lot of things happening within those two regions. And and you touched on some very interesting countries like Saudi, where, I think it's close to $20 billion have been announced in the last 24 months just for data center deployments. So, but $20 billion in that market is pretty much nothing. They build everything in the trillions anyway. So we'll wait for the $1 trillion EdgeConneX data center in Riyadh. We'll wait for that announcement. But I don't want to keep you for much longer. I just want to ask one last question around what would you say is the biggest trend that you see coming in the mid long term, and what do you think the impact is going to be in our sector?
Wow, biggest trend. I think AI is going to hit. I think, for the data center operators like ourselves, we'll probably have work to do in the inference engine side of it. Just nature of where we're at, in our case at the edge, is going to be kind of interesting when it comes to the need for distributed cloud and inference engines and how far do they go or don't go out. When I think about the training side of AI and the training engines, my gut says that'll be gigantic farms that may be self-performed, that has different reliability needs maybe than the inference engine. So there's a bunch to sort out on that technology, where it needs to go, when it goes. To talk about regulatory issues that'll emerge, whose data, who owns these models, the protection around it. Going to be some fascinating things that are going to play out on that scene. That'll drive design and tech decisions in the data center industry. I think we have only beginning to understand how big those data pipes will be. So I think that's going to be exciting, innovative. It's going to cross every boundary and barrier that we've seen before. That's going to come together. I think that's going to be interesting. Let's not kid ourselves. Power, depending on what market you're talking about, and you can't just say, hey, power is impossible in Dublin, therefore it must be super impossible in Vietnam. Right? Those don't apply. Right? It makes no sense. You can't paint with that brush. But the reality is power challenges, power scarcity, regulatory challenges, the continuing of some NIMBY stuff, right? Which I think people are like, I don't want a data center, but I want all the benefits of digitalization, and I want everything protected in private. Okay, like there's a reality thing here. Hey, but you can create a great company. You can create great businesses, you can digitize your economy, and you don't congest roads is not the worst thing in the world, right? But we gotta get that message out.
No, absolutely. And in a global world, we have to now really look into the local area of where we want to develop. And all these changes and challenges and issues, they also become opportunities very quickly in the data center space. That's the beauty of this industry, is that very quickly we can transform something not so good into something good and revenue generating and profitable. I'll say 99.99% of the companies that operate in our space.
And look, the good news is, if when you were talking with folks a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was supply chain, crushing. And while there are supply chain challenges, much worse than there were 2 or 3 years ago, and times are much longer and lead times, we're back to predictable. Right. We're out of the unpredictable into some level of predictability. Now we've got a lot of management to do to improve it and clean it up and optimize cost structures and stuff. Right. You just get to raise prices every week. So.
It's about learning and adapting. And I think that's the main thing, not even just for data centers, as human beings. It's if something goes wrong or doesn't go according to plan, learn and act on it in the near future and the long-term future. But Randy Brouckman, Chief Executive of EdgeConneX, thank you so much for talking to me. It's always a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be catching up soon again. As for your home, thank you for watching, and do check our website and social media for more content and timely news from across the digital infrastructure sector worldwide. At the Tech Capital, you lead, we report. Bye for now.